Have you ever thought of spiking your drink? Do you spike your drink? You should. I do. I've started spiking my drinks every day, spiking them with mint water. That's right, just pure 100% water and mint. It's really good. I used to drink a lot of water. Now I drink even more. I'm even more hydrated. I even get up in the middle of the night to pee over and over again. Hi, I'm Terry, and if I'm not vlogging just for myself and you're here with me, well, thank you so much for being here. I'm coming to you with a new vlog, and this one is one that I've mentioned before. It's a really important subject, and it's also really interesting whether it applies to you or not. It's great insight into the human psyche. Have you ever wondered what it takes to be the best you? I've learned something, and it's so important, and I love what I've learned, and that is that I don't want to be like anybody else. I want to be me, but I want to be the best version of me. Because when I'm the best that I can be the best for my utmost passion in my life. For me, my passion, my overriding passion, is to rescue, save, do all I can for animals, namely dogs, but all animals, cats, dogs, even bears, raccoons, squirrels, whatever critters, because I believe that critters are really the best things. But if you've watched my other vlogs, I've certainly had my challenges and my adversities, and I want to believe that I've been coming out on the better side. Although I still make mistakes, I have flaws, but I'm doing better and better every day. And that's what we can do, is that on this journey, for those of us who are on a serious journey, I know that I am, we live, we learn, we evolve, we refine, we become better, and we have setbacks, and then we get right back up and dust ourselves off again. But one of the most important things is to never let the dusty follow you. And the dusty are those people from your past. Yes, ghosts of toxins past. And most of us have them. I know that I do. Mine are a blend of parents, family, relatives. So I prefer not to call them family, because they're really not family. They're relatives. They're past relationships, associations, acquaintances, all types of people. And I've learned in my life that the reason that I've had so many bad relationships in my life, and it took me such a long time to learn that they were bad relationships, is because of my childhood and my upbringing. I am the product of sociopath parents, both mother and father, and I've mentioned this before. And this is key to understanding if you were a child and you had an upbringing like me and mine, then it's something that you want to stay tuned for, because it really gives you a lot of insight, what I'm about to say. And these are things that I've learned, through my research. I'm not a doctor, but you know what? It doesn't take a doctor to impart experience. Experience is something that really is more important than a degree. And so, have you ever wondered why you attracted people like the people that brought you up, the people that you grew up with, and did you think it was just a coincidence? I used to think it was a coincidence. I just didn't understand why I was constantly attracting these people, these relationships, these associations that were so damaging to me. And I learned it's because I was giving off a vibe that I carried on throughout my adolescence from my childhood. You know, the parents that I had were and are toxic. My father passed away, and I don't miss him one bit, and I have no problem in admitting that. I'm actually not bitter, but I am very angry still at him. You know, and you'll always hear the cliche, well, forgive, and it feels so much better. You know what? The truth is that sometimes it's just not that simple. You know, you and your feelings are valid, and you can try to get over things in your own time, not on somebody else's timetable or because somebody else tells you that you have to get over it. At any rate, it's difficult for me still. You know, I've had so many adversities. I'll say this again, I've been in jails and prisons. I'm not proud of it. I've committed crimes of fraud and theft. Well, they were always fraud, but because they were done at a businesses, they were labeled as burglary in the penal code, theft. So I committed quite a long line of these crimes, and I spent, unfortunately, a lot of time in jails and prisons, and I've had the most difficult days and nights in my life. But you know, my adversities weren't just in institutions, they were out here in the free world, as it's called. But I've also learned that the free world is only free when you feel like that on the inside. You can be out here in society and still feel like a prisoner, like I have for so much of my life. So let me get to this briefly, my life, just a general overview. My mother is a sociopath. My father was a controlling sociopath. My mother is an underhanded sociopath. And what I've learned about them is that they yes, they actually take pleasure even in doing it to their children. They take pleasure in harming you, causing you grief, sorrow, pain, suffering, damages, and then screaming victim. So my mother was that way because she was underhanded, and she still is, and I found that they only become worse in the years that go by because they lack a conscience. So my father was a controlling sociopath, and he liked to control people, and when he couldn't control others, he would control me and take it out on me all the more. I was raised, you know, as a child, as an adolescent, long story short, as a young adult and growing, I was always told in so many words indirectly by my parents and my uncles, and then their wives when they figured it out, that they can do these things to me because, hey, my relatives endorse it, you know, so they felt comfortable. And what they made me believe is that I was never good enough, that my feelings were never valid, that I should never speak up. In fact, I should be as invisible as possible while being their scapegoat, while being gaslighted to do things for them. I was there to serve them in their opinion. In their opinion, they were also upright, above all else, and they could never do wrong. And if anything was done wrong, then it was the next person, of course, not them. And if anything happened, then they were the victims. They also caused problems with other relatives. They were the types of people that were and are so very entitled in the worst way. However, instead of myself growing up to become a sociopath, I became an empath. As a result, I was raised not to have any boundaries at all. And it was difficult for me to build even healthy boundaries. So I had zero. And that was so bad for me because I actually believed the things that they wanted me to believe. I believed I wasn't good enough. I believed that my feelings were not valid and that I should not be true to my feelings. I also came away with not listening to my intuition, not trusting that inner voice, the good inner voice, which is called intuition or a higher sense. And as a result, I was abused verbally, psychologically, mentally, and physically. My father never raised a hand to me, although he abused me psychologically and he knew exactly how to. My mother did abuse me physically. She would actually beat me. There was one time when she bit my finger to the point where it needed stitches, and of course she never took me to get stitches. Yeah, that's how my parents were. She would beat me all the time with with her Dr. Scholl shoes. She would, and I smiled only because it's a reference to the 80s, and I love so many things 80s. Actually, 50s, 60s, 70s, mid-century, and 80s, so that's a side note. At any rate, she beat me so much. She actually actively had a hand in me being molested by her boyfriend. I was about 11 or 12, and her boyfriend at the time was 35 years old, and his name was Richard. I don't know if he's still around. He had molested little girls before me, and he actually did so after me, in fact. And I know that because he told me about it. When I was about 11 or 12, we lived in Portland, Oregon, my mother and my younger brother. We lived with my uncles and my grandparents in a very large and pretty home. But I wouldn't call it a home, it was a house. I've never felt like I had a home until now, where I have my own beautiful home that I've recently moved to. I never felt like I belonged, and I, in fact, never did belong to anyone or anywhere. I never had my own things as a child growing up, although my family could afford it. There I go again, out of habit and purely out of habit, calling them alleged family. They are just toxins. So even though they could certainly afford to buy me school supplies, clothing, shoes, the things that I needed as a child, they would always make a point not to purchase anything from me and walk around saying, "You have so much, we always buy you so much, and you're never satisfied. You're just spoiled and unhappy no matter what we do for you." How blatantly false, when they never purchased anything from me. The only way that I got by was by my wits and any other method that I could. And most of the time as a child, I had school supplies if I was able to get bits and pieces off of classmates, or I had a really nice friend, Mimi, and she would often give me things. But aside from that, I had nothing, and I wore other people in the household, their cast-offs. I would take it, and I learned on my own how to sew and alter the clothing to my size because I was a child and the clothing was too big. So I would just do what I could to make things fit. It's the only way. I had a winter coat, for example. I had a pair of jeans that I loved, and those were Mimi's. She gave them to me. Her mother told her to give them to me. This is how I grew up. And while we lived there, my mother had a boyfriend, Richard, and he was an out and out pedophile. I didn't know it at the time, but my mother would never let him in the house. She always treated him like shit. And that told me that there was something wrong with this guy. I mean, I won't actively call him a man, but he was a coward. People like that, males like that, you can't really call them men. They're cowards. Preying on people who are vulnerable and alone. And I was vulnerable and alone, and he knew that. Just like I could see my mother treated him like shit, he could see that my mother abused me, that she just had a hatred for me. He had even remarked that a couple times to me, and that's how he manipulated me. My mother would force me to go to his house, and I remember the first time that she told me that I would be going to his house after school to be quote unquote tutored, which was a lie. She was just trying to get time for herself, and she would pawn me off on him, my younger brother and myself, in fact. And before that first time that I was scheduled to go to his house, I told her I don't want to go, and here's what she did. And I'm not smiling. This is actually, I'm feeling very rueful. She came back with this: why are you scared he's going to rape you? At that point, I knew that there's nothing that I could do to stop this. My mother is a very intelligent person, individual. She knew what was up. I knew what was up. And it happened that the very first time that my younger brother and I were at his house, he would make remarks about my mother, and he said something like, well, your mom is buddies with your brother and she just can't stand you, but that's okay. You can be buddy with me, I'll be your friend. That part was actually true, but he was never my friend. I didn't have any friends, and my mother was never my mother. So he knew how to exploit these things for his own twisted pleasure. But it actually worked, because when he said that, it cemented what I knew all along. And I think part of me found some type of connection in him, but isn't this how they always do it? He would buy things like a favorite ice cream flavor, keep it in the freezer, gourmet ice cream, in fact, and ironically, that's how I became familiar with some of the better things in life. So he would buy these things. He would once in a while, in a blue moon, buy me clothing. It was rare, but he would parse it out, here and there, and which for me was something magical, because I had nothing. Nobody ever bought me anything. The toxins in my household would even buy my younger brother things that he needed and was entitled to or had a right to as a child, as a minor. But when it came to me, I got nothing. So even little things parsed out were a big deal to me. And then inevitably he started touching me, and it was one of my worst fears, you know, and I did stop him, but yet he pursued it and pursued it. You know, he knew where it was going. And here I was, a little girl who didn't really even know what kissing was. I had never even been kissed. And here was a 35-year-old man. And this is how I grew up. I actually did come to think after a while that I loved him, because he manipulated me, molested me, and he very painfully raped me. And my household knew about it the entire time. My grandmother knew it, my uncles knew it, even my father in California knew it, as he came to tell me some years later. He knew it while it was happening. He did nothing about it. And this was a controlling individual. Didn't bother to do anything about it. My family, of course, only cared about their reputation, which in their mind was a great reputation, but actually society it was not, because people knew how they were. At any rate, so they weren't going to report him to the authorities. Keep in mind, my mother knew about it before it even happened, you know. So I grew up to believe that I should keep everything swallowed down and kept packed inside of me, that when in fact I was worth everything good. I grew up to believe that I should not protect myself. I should not give myself the value that I actually had and deserved. Consequently, my parents, when they got back together and we moved to California, I was taken away from this pedophile. And for me, it was a sad time. It shouldn't have been, right? But it was, because I was manipulated. And it's partly Stockholm syndrome, I believe. You know, so in my early to mid teenage years, I was having boyfriends who always had sex with me and never cared about me. I, on the other hand, would allow this because I wanted to be loved. And they never loved me, they never cared about me, but they used me. I had boyfriends my own age, I had boyfriends older than myself, because as most people told me, I looked about 17 or 18 when I was 12 to 13 to 14. You know, so it attracted older men who were 19 or 20, and to me that was ancient. You know, to my friends, to my girlfriends and myself, that was like so ancient. But hey, you know, like older men, 19, 20 were attractive because they were experienced. And this is the thing that takes place in your mind, you know, to become sexual at such an early age, to never put your hands up to stop anything, because if you do, then maybe they won't like you. And of course you have to be a people pleaser, not a personal pleaser. I never lived for myself. In fact, I never lived. I always felt like I existed. So I was never my best self or even my good self. I was the worst version of myself. Consequently, I was always trying to be somebody else and something else that I wasn't. You know, because I was never loved, because I was always lonely, I believed that I could lie and tell people, well, you know, I'm not looking for love in a relationship. And maybe that would make me more alluring. wrong. That just attracted more dusty people. And by dusty, I mean really toxic. And I was always attracting toxic people because they could see it a mile away. And I remember one time when I was in a rehab in Pasadena, one of the counselors there told me that you, and she meant in general, is when you've grown up the way you have, you attract bad people. And I always thought, what the hell is she talking about? If I'm not asking them and telling them, come here, then how am I attracting these bad people? But I learned later that you attract them because they can see it in your actions and the way you carry yourself and the way you just sit someplace, in your characteristics. They're very learned at these things. So I could never be the best version of myself that I knew I could be and deserved to be, because always the underlying thought was the reality that I was worth it, I was good enough, but I could never put that into play. And if you've grown up like me, let me tell you something. Sometimes it takes forever to learn these things, but when you're open to it, it starts coming to you. You start manifesting it, and manifestation does exist. It's so true, and it can be such a good thing. You start manifesting good things. One of them is self-education. Information comes to you, in addition to what you research and find. And in these days and times, there's so much free information available at our fingertips, so we can learn so much about ourselves and about the people who we grew up with. And I want to let you know, and I think there's going to be a part 2 to this, I'm not sure right now, but I just want to let you know there's always a better day. Don't ever give up. I mean, I had so much in my life, and I still do, I'm still a work in progress. I'm still learning, but now I'm such a better me. Just like those bad people could see the damaged me, now my eyes are so open through information, self-realization, and the process of healing that I can spot those people a mile away now. And I don't let them in my life. In fact, now I have boundaries. I have my boundaries put up so solidly that you couldn't get through them with wire cutters. And I'm proud of that. In fact, maybe I have too many boundaries now. That can happen too. But you know what? It's okay. We refine, We learn, we evolve, we refine, we become better. But I'm happy with the boundaries that I have. And they're a result of me finally being able to see things so clearly. Again, what I'm saying is, whatever you're going through, and it's not just you, there are so many people, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they've been through, what they've fought through, what they've survived. Take me for instance. At face value, maybe you would never think that I've been in jails and prisons, probably for most of my life. But I have. You would never guess the adversities and the challenges that I faced. The nights when I thought there would never be a tomorrow. But you know what? I came through it with flying colors, as they say. And it becomes just a little brighter every day. Just a little bit, but that's just the thing. There's improvement. I'm not religious. I used to be all about God, not in an orthodox way, but now I firmly believe that there isn't a God, but I'm very spiritual. Spirituality also involves science. Check it out. You'll see that it's true. But here's the thing. What I'm saying, and my point is that if you don't give up and you keep going, you're making progress. And just a little bit of brightness every day, and a little more, and even the tiniest bit more, that's going forward. You may fall back a few times, you may fall down, and you will, but get back up and start again. Yeah, you're starting again, but don't forget that all the progress you make can never be taken from you. It all adds up. They're all just more bricks in the house that you hope becomes a home. Don't give up. There's always a better tomorrow, and it's not just a cliche. So if I'm not making this vlog just for myself and you're here with me, well then come back, because there will be a lot more and a lot better.